The licked hand. I grew up on a small remote farm in the center of France with my mom and dad. With no neighbors and the nearest village a 20-minute drive away, it is safe to say I lived in the middle of nowhere. For the most part, I had a simple life. I would spend my days just relaxing in my room, drawing, listening to the news on the TV, whilst my puppy Harley would patiently sit by my side, watching me as I worked. He was a rather docile pet, but as loyal as it came. It was one night in winter when my parents decided to take a trip into Lyon to see friends. Nothing out of the ordinary there. I was 15 and more than capable of looking after myself. As far as I was concerned, it was just another normal day for me. As the night grew darker and I had finished washing up after dinner, I retreated back to my bedroom to relax and just continue on with my drawings as normal. I flicked on the TV and got settled at the chair by my desk before I realized Harley wasn't by my side as normal. Looking around, I spotted him in the corner of my eye, just perched against the window, staring outwards. The weather had begun to turn at this point, and I could hear the heavy pounding of rain starting to beat against the window. I know dogs are pretty perceptive to changes in the weather, so I just assumed he was curious. I sat there for a little while, admiring his curiosity. He almost looked transfixed. It was at the first rumble of thunder that shook the night sky and the flash of lightning which illuminated the room that he barked. I called him over to me. I couldn't let him torment himself like this. Although hesitant at first, he slowly decided to slink his way over to me, more wary than normal. But who could blame him? To a dog, the weather must be apocalyptic. I continued with my drawing, occasionally catching the odd line or two of news. A politician in trouble for not doing enough to prevent climate change, a series of horrific murders currently being uncovered, a famous football player dating some kind of supermodel. It's nice to have background noise, but sometimes these stories can really be unsettling. I kept going for a few more hours, but after coming to the conclusion I was far too tired to continue, I decided it would be better for me to stop for the time being and get myself to bed. I made my way to the other side of my room and got settled down for the night. Ali, as per normal, laid next to my bed, although he seemed a little bit distant. The storm sounded like it was in full swing now, and I guess he was just restless. I, on the other hand, loved the sound. There was something calming about the heavy winds, rain, and distant claps of thunder. Before I realized it, I was asleep. I was startled awake by the door to my room slamming open. With the storm still raging outside, I reluctantly checked my phone for the time. My eyes burned from the dim light of the screen. There was a message from my parents saying they were on the way home. I guess they didn't want to leave me by myself when the weather was this bad. I tried to focus on the door a bit more. I swear I closed it before I went to bed, but living in an old farmhouse with a storm this strong, it was probably just the intense wind. I clambered out of bed in the pitch black of my room and closed the door. I was really not awake. As I got back into bed, I could hear Harley panting on the floor beside me. Poor guy must have been startled. I let my hand hang over the side of my bed to let him know I was there, as he gently licked my fingers. As I laid there, I realized how much my legs and thigh ached. I must have really been tossing and turning in my sleep. So, eventually, with the affectionate nuzzles of Harley, I managed to drift asleep once more. The next few moments of my life were a hazy blur that I still can't quite wrap my head around. I'm not quite sure how long I had been asleep for at this point, but the next thing I remember was my door bursting open once more. So, unlike the last time, my father was silhouetted in the doorframe. Before I knew it, he had bounded across the room, lifted me from my bed, blanket and all, and was starting to run downstairs. My head was spinning at this point. What was going on? My dad was just silent. His face was white, the palest shade of white I had ever seen. As we made our way to the front door, even over the storm, I could hear the sobs and wails of my mother. Once he had carried me over the threshold, she ran towards us and held us tight. I managed to free my face from their crushing embrace and gazed back up at our house. And there, painting on the front walls in a deep crimson color, were the words, "Humans can lick too." It was like time itself froze. We were drenched by the rain, and in the distance, I could see the glowing flashes of blue lights. On the porch, the disheveled black mound of holly lay spread from one side to the other, and from my window, the silhouette of a man. It would be a few weeks before we returned back to the farm. The police had shortly burst into the house, half an hour or so after my parents had arrived. Inside my room, they found a slew of muddy footprints, along with tattered clothes, rope, and a collection of blood-stained knives. They never caught whoever broke into a farmhouse that night. Police searched the forests around for weeks after, only finding the stained collar of my beloved Harley. The boyfriend. It was late on a stormy Sunday night when my boyfriend Craig and I were driving back home from my parents after a family get-together. The trip wasn't a long one, normally only about 1 hour and a half at most, but the intensity of the weather had caused a nearly endless string of diversion and delays through a combination of downed trees and flooded roads. It was around 2 hours into our extended drive home, after snaking through countless back roads, when our car hit something in the road. My boyfriend cursed under his breath as he cruised the car to a halt. Pulling his jacket over his head, he got out of the car to go check what had happened. I could just about see him illuminated in the warm glow from the headlights as the car wipers worked frantically to clear the never-ending downpour of rain from the windows. A few moments later, he clambered back into the car, grumbling and soaking wet. He thought we must have hit something on the road, probably a fallen branch ripped from a tree by the harsh winds. Either way, a tire had completely blown. What made it worse was neither of us had any phone signal whatsoever. I'm still not sure if it was just a result of the extreme weather or if it was because we were in the middle of nowhere, and the chances of getting a repairman out to us was slim to none. Now, Craig isn't the kind of guy to just sit around and wait for something to happen, so against my protest, he made the decision to go find help. We had passed a bunch of old farmhouses a mile or so back. Someone must have a tractor or something to help give us a tow. He told me not to worry, told me to lock the car, and that he would be back within an hour or two. So, after kissing me on the forehead and turning on the car's hazard light, he left. Switching on his phone's torch, once more he ventured out the car, braving the elements and setting off down the road. I watched him walking off in the dim flash of the orange lights until he was completely lost from sight, swallowed by the rain and darkness. As I stared into the night, the first feeling of worry kicked in. I hope he was going to be okay. Time passed slowly as I just sat there in the passenger seat, just playing on my phone. It must have been nearly an hour or so since he left. Maybe he was struggling to make his way through the fields to get to one of the houses. 2 hours now. Where was he? I thought to myself. The rain still hadn't let up. What was that? I turned around in my seat. It sounded like something rapping on the window. It must have just been twigs landing on the car from the trees above. There it was again. I unlocked the car and opened my door, stepping into the rain. Nothing. I retreated back inside. My clothes were already soaked through, and I was starting to shiver now. Why wasn't Craig back yet? Hunkering down in my seat and trying to get comfy, exhausted from the long day, worn out from the frantic drive and scared for the whereabouts of my partner, the only thing my mind and body wanted to do was sleep. I lay there, eyes shutting under the weight of my stress, trying to get my head to relax as the sound of rain drummed into my ears. I was awoken by the sound of sirens blaring in my ears. I'm not sure when I drifted off. The next thing I knew, a policeman was opening the passenger side door and shining a torch in my face. "She's alive!" he called out to someone in the distance as he started to pull me from my seat. I was so confused to the situation I had completely forgotten how to speak. His words seemed broken in my mind. "It's okay now, you're safe." "He's in the back!" The world started to come back into focus, enough for me to resist the policeman pulling at my arm, the ice-cold rain waking me up. "Where's Craig?" is all I could say. The policeman stared at me, his face white. "Where's Craig?" I said again as I began to turn back. The policeman tried to stop me. "You don't want to do that, miss." I shook him off as I turned around. To an image, burned into the very core of my mind. The severed head of Craig sat upon the roof of a car as a group of police officers dragged a struggling blood-covered man from the back seat. Even over the rain, I could still hear his maniacal laughter. The Babysitter. I've grown up as an only child of a single mom. I was lucky that my neighbors Sally and Ryan were always able to look after me when mom wasn't about, to the point I came to view them as a sort of surrogate aunt and uncle. I almost looked forward to my mom leaving for the weekends when I could stay over at theirs for a sleepover. Now, this wasn't to say mom would just abandon me, or that she didn't care about me, no. Just, she had left my apparently abusive father while she was pregnant with me. And, you see, she brought me up all by herself. We didn't have any other family to help out, so I think she just needed a break from it all. I didn't really think too much of it back then. After all, I was just a kid. I was 10 years old when my neighbors had their son Jamie. I remember when they brought him home and Mom and I went around to visit. He was like the little brother I always wanted. It was when I was 18 that Ryan came to the house to ask if I could babysit Jamie for the weekend, as he and Sally had to travel out of town due to the unexpected death of her father. I told him of course I was happy to. I had looked after him a bunch of times over the last couple of years, but never for a whole weekend. Plus, at this point, Mom hadn't come back home from a week away yet, and I was running pretty low on food. Ryan looked at me with a slight air of concern before concluding that there were no other option than me to stay over until Mom got back home. That way, I could look after Jamie and house sit at the same time while they were away. Within the hour, I had grabbed my laptop to finish my college work and had arrived next door. As soon as I walked in, Jamie ran up to me and grabbed my leg. "Hey, little dude," I said as I ruffled his hair. It wasn't long till Ryan and Sally were ready to head off. Sally didn't say much when I got there. I could hear the sobs under her breath as she carried a small suitcase down the stairs. It was a strange feeling I felt for her in that moment. I felt sorry for her loss, yet somehow jealous that she had a father figure like that to cry over. After they had left and I had gotten settled, little Jamie was chilling out on the sofa watching some cartoons while I sat at the kitchen table finishing up a project for college, eager to get it out of the way so I could order some food with the money Ryan left me for the weekend. I was just about done with my work when my phone went off. It made me jump, I was so engrossed I had forgotten I had left it on the side next to me. I looked up from my laptop. Jamie was oblivious to the noise. I checked my phone. It was Mom. I picked it up and walked out in the hallway. "Where have you been? I haven't heard from you in days," I shouted on the phone. Silence. "Mom, when are you getting back home? You can't keep running off like this all the time." Still silence. I stood there, just listening. I could hear the subtle sounds of someone breathing. If you're not gonna talk, then fuck you. I hung up the phone in a temper. What was she playing at? I wandered back to the living room, frustrated at the call, when I spotted Jamie peering over the edge of the sofa. He looked worried. "It's okay, little dude. How about we order pizza?" That put a smile on his face. Work would have to wait for now. It had just gone 9 p.m., and when I looked over to the side, I saw Jamie was sound asleep. An evening of pizza, games, and Disney films were the little dude out. I got up from the sofa and flicked off the TV, turning back to carefully pick Jamie up in my arms and carry him upstairs. After tucking him into his bed, making sure his stuffed rabbit was cuddled up next to him, I made my way back to the kitchen to finish off my project. What on earth was that? It sounded like it came from my house. It had gone 12 p.m. and I was starting to get pretty blurry-eyed from staring at the dim screen in the darkness of the kitchen. I left the house by the front door, making sure to lock it thoroughly behind me. There was no lights on my house, so I don't think anyone had broken in. Maybe Mom was back? I dug my phone out of my pocket. It was Mom again. "What the hell are you doing this late at night? Did you fall over or something?" Again, no response. Just the sound of breathing, this time a little harder though. I hung up. Great, this is just what I needed tonight, I thought to myself. Making my way up to the front door, I went to push it open, but it was locked. Maybe it wasn't Mom then? Then what was that noise? I fumbled around for my keys first before I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, closing the door behind me. The house was still, not a single sign of life or movement. I made my way across the opening hallway to the light switch and flicked it on, the brightness of the light causing my vision to swim momentarily. I didn't even bother to answer it this time, just hanging up straight away. I made my way through the house, checking each room as I did. I swear I heard a smash. It wasn't until I made my way upstairs and into my own bedroom where I caught the glistening reflections of light from the bedroom floor. I switched on the light. There lay the rock, and surrounding it lay shards of broken glass from the bedroom window, which now supported a gaping hole. What the hell, I thought. Did some kids throw this or something? I didn't see anyone outside. There wasn't much I could do though at this point, other than head back next door and contact the police. Someone was hammering at the door. Who on earth could that be? Was it whoever threw the rock? I slowly made my way to the broken window and peered outside. There was flashing blue lights and a small crowd of people gathered outside. Had someone already called the police? Damn it, Mom, not now! I shut in on my phone as I once more hung up again, making my way out of my room and downstairs. As I opened the door, the police officer looked concerned. "We wanted to check if everything was okay here, ma'am. One of your neighbors contacted us about someone trying to break into the empty house next door." I froze. Before I knew it, I had bounded past the police officer to next door as quick as I could. I could hear the officer shouting for me, but I didn't have time to stop, didn't have time to think, fumbling in my pockets for the keys. Jamie, he's all alone in there. I unlocked the door and busted it wide open. My heart stopped. My head started to spin as I fell to my knees. My eyes fell upon the blood-covered stuffed rabbit lying at the bottom of the stairs. I could hear shouts from behind me, the sound of footsteps, all muffled in the haze that clouded my mind. I didn't know what to do. I reached for my phone. I had to call Mom. It was coming from upstairs.
Daddy's